Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Today we're taking a close look at BDNF, a molecule that plays a huge role in how our brains work, change, and adapt.
It's an exciting one to explore.
You bet it is. Now, our listener today wants the full story on BDNF. We're talking about everything, how it's made, how it moves, how it signals, and how it even interacts with other molecules, especially those involved with cannabinoids and psychedelics.
Sounds like we've got a lot of ground to cover.
We do, but we're going to make sure it all makes sense, even if you don't have a PhD in molecular biology, right?
Absolutely. We'll break it down step by step.
Okay, so first things first. Can you tell us what BDNF actually is and why we should care so much about this one tiny molecule?
Well, BDNF stands for brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and it's a key protein that plays a starring role in brain plasticity.
Brain plasticity.
Yeah, brain plasticity. That's our brain's incredible ability to change, adapt, and learn throughout our lives. Think of it like this. Your brain is constantly rewiring itself based on your experiences, and BDNF is like the master electrician, making sure all the connections are strong and efficient.
So BDNF is like the electrician, and our brains are a giant, ever-changing circuit board.
That's a great analogy. And without enough BDNF, those circuits can get overloaded.
Leading to.
Problems with learning, memory, mood regulation, and even recovering from brain injuries.
That makes sense. And, we've got some research here that shows that cannabinoid agonists like THC can actually disrupt short-term memory.
Interesting.
While at the same time leaving well-learned information intact, suggesting a potential role for the endocannabinoid system in forgetting. So I got to ask, does that tie into BDNF at all?
Possibly. I mean, it definitely suggests that the endocannabinoid system, where those cannabinoid receptors hang out, could be involved in that whole delicate process of forgetting. And since BDNF is so important for memory formation, well, it wouldn't be surprising if it's also involved in regulating how we forget things, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, let's get back to BDNF itself then. Where does this superstar molecule come from, and how is it actually made?
Well, it all starts with our DNA. The genetic blueprint inside each of our cells. To make BDNF, a specific section of your DNA gets transcribed into a molecule called messenger RNA, or mRNA for short.
mRNA.
Yep. Think of mRNA as a temporary copy of the instructions for building BDNF.
Okay, so it's like taking a snapshot of the BDNF recipe from the master cookbook of DNA.
Exactly. And that snapshot, the mRNA, travels out of the cell's nucleus where DNA is stored and heads to the ribosomes.
Ribosomes?
Yeah, ribosomes. They're like tiny protein factories inside the cell. They read the instructions on the mRNA and use them to assemble the BDNF protein piece by piece.
Wow, it's amazing how much is going on inside our cells. We have our own little construction crews in there building these important molecules.
I know, right? It really is quite remarkable. And it's pretty interesting to note, actually, that a similar process is involved in making those cannabinoid receptor ligands, too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so just like mRNA guides the production of proteins like BDNF, it also guides the production of those ligands, and they can bind to and activate cannabinoid receptors.
So those ligands are like keys that fit into the locks of cannabinoid receptors.
Precisely. And some of them, it seems, they have a preference for the CB2 receptor over the CB1 receptor.
Huh, that's interesting. Why is that preference important?
Well, you see, CB1 receptors are mainly found in the brain, while CB2 receptors are more prevalent in the immune system.
Ah, I see.
So this difference in their location, well, it suggests that there might be different ways to, to target that endocannabinoid system depending on whether we want to affect brain function or immune response.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've got our BDNF being built in these little cellular factories. But how does it actually get D to where it needs to be in the brain? Does it just kind of float around until it bumps into the right place?
Not quite. It's much more organized than that. The newly made BDNF is packaged into these tiny membrane-bound sacs called vesicles.
Vesicles.
Yeah. Think of them as little delivery trucks, protecting that BDNF and transporting it to different parts of the brain.
So it's like a miniature postal service happening inside our brains, delivering these crucial BDNF packages.
Exactly.
But how do those vesicles know where to go? How do they know where to drop off their precious cargo?
That's a great question. And it's actually an area of active research. There are different pathways and mechanisms involved, some relying on specific proteins that, well, they kind of act like zip codes, guiding the vesicles to their correct destinations. Others involve these intricate interactions with the cell's internal scaffolding called the cytoskeleton.
Wow, so there's a whole system in place to make sure BDNF gets to where it needs to be.
Absolutely. It's essential, given how crucial it is.
Yeah, it's like a carefully choreographed dance ensuring BDNF reaches the neurons that need it most.
Well said.
So, okay, BDNF has been delivered to its destination. Then what? How does it actually communicate with the neurons and tell them what to do?
Ah, that's where the concept of receptors comes in.
Receptors.
Yeah, receptors. You see, cells have these specialized proteins on their surfaces called receptors, which act like locks. And BDNF, well, BDNF is like a key that fits into a specific lock, a receptor called 2RKB.
Ah, so BDNF can't just waltz into any cell at once. It needs that right receptor to let it in and start the party.
Exactly. When BDNF binds to that TRKB receptor, it sets up this whole cascade of molecular events inside the cell.
Like a chain reaction.
Yeah, like a chain reaction.
Yeah.
This signaling cascade is crucial for, well, for all the amazing things BDNF does, from promoting brain cell growth to enhancing synaptic plasticity.
Hold on, synaptic plasticity, what exactly does that mean?
Synaptic plasticity refers to the ability of the connections between neurons, called synapses, to strengthen or weaken over time. It's the basis of learning and memory. When we learn something new, those synapses involved in that learning become stronger, and BDNF plays a key role in making that happen.
So it's like BDNF helps those connections get more solid, making it easier for those neurons to communicate with each other.
Precisely. And the stronger those connections, well, the better we learn, remember, and process information.
This is all so fascinating. It's like a whole hidden world inside our brains with these tiny molecules playing such important roles. But, I'm still curious about how those cannabinoid and psychedelic molecules fit into all of this.
We'll definitely get there. Both cannabinoid receptors, CB1 and CB2, and the serotonin 5-HT2A receptor, which those psychedelics act on, can influence BDNF signaling. They do it in different ways, but the connection is definitely there.
So we're talking about boosting BDNF levels here. Could that be part of how those substances might be helpful for things like anxiety and depression?
Well, that's what some of the research is suggesting. For example, some cannabinoids have been shown to increase BDNF levels in various brain regions, including the hippocampus.
The hippocampus, that's that crucial area for memory formation, right? So boosting BDNF there could potentially improve memory function.
That's definitely one possibility. And it's worth noting that blocking CB1 receptors has actually been shown to prolong memory duration in animal models.
Yeah. So blocking those receptors might interfere with the brain's natural forgetting mechanism, potentially leading to stronger memories.
Exactly. It really highlights the complex role of that endocannabinoid system in regulating memory and cognition. We're still figuring out all the intricacies of how these systems interact, but it's clear that BDNF is a key player.
It's getting pretty complex.
It is.
But I'm starting to see how everything is connected.
It is complex, but that's what makes it so fascinating,
Right.
right? We're starting to understand that these seemingly separate systems, the endocannabinoid system, the serotonin system, and that BDNF system, they're actually deeply intertwined. They influence each other in really subtle and powerful ways.
I can't wait to learn more about those connections. But I think we've covered a lot of ground for one session. Maybe we should take a break and come back to explore the psychedelic side of things in more detail. What do you think?
That sounds like a great plan. We've laid a solid foundation, and now we can delve into how those psychedelic molecules interact with BDNF and potentially impact brain function in unique and therapeutic ways.
Sounds good to me.
Welcome back. Ready to dig deeper into those psychedelic molecules and their link to BDNF?
You bet I am. Last time we were just starting to uncover those connections, and I'm eager to hear more.
Well, it's definitely an area where research is heating up. Scientists are really trying to understand how psychedelics like, psilocybin and LSD, how they interact with BDNF, and if those interactions might be part of why they seem to have therapeutic potential.
Right. And you mentioned before that psychedelics act on that serotonin 5-HT2A receptor. Could you remind me how that receptor fits into this whole BDNF story?
Of course. So the serotonin 5-HT2A receptor, it's a type of protein found on the surface of neurons, and it's particularly abundant in areas of the brain that are involved in mood, perception, and cognition. What's really fascinating is that when psychedelics bind to this receptor, it triggers a cascade of events. And this cascade, well, it can lead to increased BDNF production.
So it's like psychedelics are flipping a switch that turns on the BDNF factory inside those neurons.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And that increase in BDNF levels could have a ripple effect throughout the brain, potentially leading to some of those, those profound psychological effects that people often experience with psychedelics.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. We've talked a lot about how BDNF is important for learning and memory, but could it also be involved in things like mood regulation or emotional processing?
Absolutely. Remember, BDNF is all about promoting the growth, survival, and connections of neurons. And those neurons, well, they aren't just involved in thinking and remembering, they're also crucial for regulating our emotions and how we respond to stress.
Gotcha. So if psychedelics are boosting BDNF, could that be why they show promise in treating things like depression and anxiety?
Well, that's one of the leading theories. Research suggests that depression and anxiety can actually be associated with reduced BDNF levels in certain parts of the brain. So, by increasing BDNF, psychedelics could be helping to reverse those deficits and promote healthier brain function overall.
It's kind of incredible to think that these molecules could be stimulating the growth and connections of neurons in those key areas involved in mood regulation.
It really is. And there's even evidence suggesting that psychedelics might promote neurogenesis.
Neurogenesis?
Yeah, the birth of new brain cells in regions like the hippocampus.
Hold on. You mean they could actually be helping to grow brand new brain cells?
That's what some studies are indicating. And the hippocampus, well, as we've discussed, is vital for learning and memory. So this increase in neurogenesis could be contributing to those long-lasting positive effects that some people report after having psychedelic experiences.
That's mind-blowing. But I got to ask, are there any potential downsides to all of this BDNF boosting? Could there be any negative consequences?
That's a really important question, and it's something that researchers are actively investigating.
Yeah.
While increasing BDNF in specific areas of the brain might be beneficial, excessive or uncontrolled BDNF signaling could definitely have unintended consequences. It's all about balance and making sure those delicate molecular pathways are, they're functioning well.
So it's not as simple as more BDNF is always better.
Exactly. It's a very complex system. We need to be really cautious and thoughtful as we explore the therapeutic potential of these substances. More research is needed to understand the long-term effects of psychedelics on BDNF and to figure out the optimal dosages and treatment protocols.
That makes sense. We don't want to mess with the intricate symphony of our brains without understanding the score.
Well said. It's so crucial to remember that these molecules are powerful tools and we need to use them responsibly, and with respect for their potential impact on our brains and minds.
Speaking of powerful tools, you mentioned before that blocking CB1 receptors could actually enhance memory. Could that be another avenue for therapeutic intervention?
Oh, it's certainly an intriguing possibility. By interfering with the endocannabinoid system's role in forgetting, well, we might be able to develop treatments to help people struggling with memory disorders or, even just people who need to retain information better.
I'm picturing students cramming for exams, lining up for those treatments. But in all seriousness, it's incredible to think about the potential applications of these discoveries. We've come a long way from just understanding how BDNF is made to exploring how it interacts with these complex systems. It's pretty amazing.
It really is. And the more we learn about BDNF and its molecular partners, the more we realize how interconnected everything is. It's like this giant puzzle where each piece is crucial for the big picture of brain health and function.
Well, I'm ready to tackle the next piece of that puzzle.
Yeah.
Where do we go from here in our BDNF adventure?
Well, one of the most exciting frontiers is understanding how BDNF interacts with other key players in the brain, It forms this whole network of signaling pathways that orchestrate everything from, our mood to our memory.
So it's not just a solo act, huh?
Mm.
BDNF has this whole crew of molecular partners that it collaborates with.
Exactly. Think of it like a grand symphony, with BDNF conducting this harmonious interplay of different molecules and systems.
Wow. Okay, so who are some of the key players in this molecular orchestra?
Well, one of BDNF's most important collaborators is the neurotransmitter glutamate.
Glutamate. That's
Yeah.
the one that gets our brains fired up, right?
Exactly. Glutamate is the main excitatory neurotransmitter in the brain, and it plays a crucial role in how neurons talk to each other. And here's where BDNF steps in. It works hand in hand with glutamate to strengthen those connections, making the communication between neurons more efficient.
So if glutamate is the messenger carrying info between neurons, BDNF is like the amplifier, making sure the message is loud and clear.
You got it. When glutamate is released from a neuron, it binds to receptors on the receiving neuron, exciting it. And if this happens repeatedly, the connection between those two neurons, which we call a synapse, that connection gets stronger. This is synaptic plasticity, and it's the foundation of how we learn and remember things.
So it's like practicing a skill or studying for a test. The more we repeat something, the stronger those neural connections get, all thanks to glutamate and BDNF working together.
Exactly. And BDNF doesn't stop there. It also encourages the growth of new synapses, those tiny junctions between neurons.
So it's like BDNF is constantly expanding the neural network, making it more adaptable, more resilient.
Precisely. And that constant remodeling, that's essential for our brains to adapt to new experiences, learn new things, and recover from challenges.
Wow, glutamate and BDNF, a real dynamic duo. Are there any other important partners in this intricate brain dance?
Oh, there are definitely a few more key players. The serotonin system, for instance, is another crucial one, particularly that 5-HT2A receptor we were talking about earlier in relation to psychedelics.
Right, right. So does that mean BDNF and the serotonin system are like connected in some way?
They are. It's a connection that researchers are still kind of teasing apart, but there's growing evidence that BDNF and that 5-HT2A receptor work together to regulate things like mood, cognition, and plasticity.
So this could be another piece of the puzzle, explaining why psychedelics might be helpful for treating depression and anxiety then.
Exactly. It's possible that by activating that 5-HT2A receptor, psychedelics kind of kickstart a cascade of events, and that cascade eventually leads to more BDNF being produced, which could have positive effects on mood and, cognitive function.
Man, it's amazing how all these systems are linked together, influencing each other in these really powerful ways.
It is. And it just shows how complex the brain really is. It also emphasizes how important it is to understand all those intricate interactions, especially when we're exploring potential treatments and therapies.
Okay, so we've talked about BDNF's partnership with glutamate and its connection to that serotonin system. Any other big collaborators we should know about?
Well, BDNF actually interacts with a whole bunch of other molecules and signaling pathways, including some involved in inflammation, stress responses, even energy metabolism. It's like the central hub in a vast network of communication going on inside the brain.
So BDNF is the ultimate multitasker then, juggling all of these different roles and responsibilities within the brain.
Pretty much. And that's exactly why it's so important to understand how BDNF is regulated and how we might be able to influence its activity.
Yeah.
By doing so, we might unlock its full therapeutic potential. We might even be able to improve brain health in a bunch of different ways.
That's a really exciting thought. But, if BDNF is involved in so many processes, is there anything we can do in our daily lives to support its production or maybe even boost its activity?
That's a great question, and honestly, it's something that a lot of researchers are looking into right now. While there's still a lot we don't know, evidence is growing that lifestyle factors can have a big impact on BDNF levels.
So things like diet and exercise. I mean, I've always heard those are good for the brain, but I never really thought BDNF might be part of the reason why.
It very well could be. Studies have shown that getting regular exercise can increase BDNF levels, particularly in the hippocampus. That area is so important for learning and memory, as we've discussed. And having a healthy diet, one that's rich in antioxidants and omega-3 fatty acids, that also seems to be good for BDNF production.
That's really encouraging. It means we actually have some power to influence our own brain health just by making healthy choices in our everyday lives.
Exactly. And there's even evidence suggesting that those stress reduction techniques, like meditation and mindfulness, can also have a positive impact on BDNF levels.
Wow. So it's not just about what we're putting into our bodies, but also about how we're managing our mental and emotional well-being too. It all comes back to this incredible molecule, BDNF.
It really does. The more we learn about BDNF and how it connects to everything else in the brain, the more we realize it plays a crucial role in pretty much everything, from how we learn, to how we feel, to how we age.
This has been such an incredible journey into the world of BDNF. We've learned about its production, its transportation, its many roles in brain function, and even its connections to those intriguing cannabinoids and psychedelics.
It's been great exploring all these fascinating topics with you, and I really hope our listeners have gained a deeper appreciation for this remarkable molecule. I hope they're inspired to learn more about it and all the potential it holds for, unlocking the secrets of the brain.
I know I have. So, to everyone listening, thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the world of BDNF. We've only just scratched the surface, but hopefully we've piqued your curiosity, maybe even inspired you to keep learning more.
Remember, the brain is an incredible organ, constantly changing and evolving. And by understanding those intricate dances of molecules like BDNF, we can really start to unlock its potential. We can empower ourselves to live healthier, happier, more fulfilling lives.
That's a great note to end on. Stay curious, everyone. Keep exploring, and we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.